Hey there, Vikings Nation. Get ready to dive deep into the Skol state of mind. Join our host, D. Woods, as he shares his unfiltered takes on all things Vikings, from expert game analysis to player controversies and everything in between. If you love the Vikings for better or worse, then you've come to the right place. So grab a drink and let's talk all things purple and gold. This is the Skol State of Mind podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to the Skol State of Mind podcast. I'm your host, D. Woods, and the Minnesota Vikings had a game this Sunday against the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm not sure this game went like how we all predicted, but at least the Minnesota Vikings came out there with a win, barely. And I'm saying barely because if you watch this game, I hope you wasn't that disappointed in your team like I was, because I'm sitting there like I didn't understand what was going on. I mean, the offense couldn't click. The offense couldn't go down the field. We had an early missed field goal. But I would say like the most bright spot about this game is really how dominant Brian Flores' defense is. And I want to give my hats off to Brian Flores and his defensive coaching staff for coaching this team up on the defensive side of the ball and actually keeping the Las Vegas Raiders out of the end zone and not even in field goal range to attempt the field goal. I mean, that's pretty big if you think about it when you're watching this game, because for me, it felt like the first team to actually get a touchdown or a field goal was going to win this game. And that's exactly what happened. We got a late field goal on the second drive that Nick Mullins quarterback. We're going to get into that a little bit later, but that won the game for us. And I was really, it doesn't really put a bad taste in my mouth because they won 3-0, but it was just so many things going on and within this game that just didn't sit right with me. It felt like the offense couldn't get right. And I'm not going to even blame this on Kevin O'Connell too much about his play calling and stuff like that, because I'm starting to look at the situation differently. And I'm actually taking my first stance on how I felt about Kevin O'Connell, concerning play calling when Josh Dobbs is at center. But I just really want to, before I get into everything else, I really want to shout out the defense and say, like, defense is lights out. Ivan Pace sealed the game with the interception, so hats off to them. And if we want to talk about Brian Flores, throughout the week, I really feel that he might be here for another year, considering, how many coaching jobs are going to be available and what he can do with those coaching jobs. And I don't think Brian Flores is going to take another coaching job that he can't control his own destiny. So if that's the case, then I really think Brian Flores is probably going to be here for another year. And he might even be the assistant head coach going forward. At this point, I second it. I second it straight up. But let's get into this thing right here. The Josh Dobbs experiment. Look, the Josh Dobbs experiment should and will be officially over. There's no more reasons to see Josh Dobbs under center for the Minnesota Vikings, barring Mullins gets hurt, barring Jaren Hall gets hurt. And I really feel at that point, sign somebody off the streets, because I've seen enough. Now, I basically got on my channel and I basically told you guys 4 weeks ago that Josh Dobbs wasn't it. I had a lot of people come at me saying, oh, you're not giving him a chance. Kevin O'Connell was calling plays like Kirk was at center. And I tried to break it down to him. I'll break it down to you real quick right now. Kevin O'Connell is not calling the plays like Kirk Cousins was at center. He just understands that his quarterback is extremely limited, so he has to call those plays for a limited quarterback. And I give Kevin O'Connell the hats off for changing to Nick Mullins during this game to win the game. But this is how I felt about it. I don't want to hear none of that bullshit where people saying, oh, he can run the ball. He can't run the fucking ball. Josh Dobbs can't run the ball because he's a turnover machine. If he runs the ball, he fumbles. If he passes the ball down the field farther than 15 yards, it's an interception. So why is he even playing in the game? So miss me with all that talk about, oh, Kevin O'Connell has to tailor the offense to Josh Dobbs' strengths. What are his strengths? I will wait. What is his strong point? Is it turning the ball over? Because to me, he is just a journeyman quarterback, a third string quarterback at best. So I don't want to hear none of that shit no more of Kevin O'Connell not tailoring the offense to Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs just can't play. We saw that today, and we've been seeing it for the past 3 games. I just want to get that out there because it's like I just kind of feel like as a fan base, we make excuses for the wrong people. Like everybody knows I'm a Kirk Cousins guy, but if Kirk Cousins go out there and does something stupid, I'm gonna be the first to call him out. But it seems like we're so enamored as a fan base because something is different than Kirk Cousins, and we think that's better. It's not. Josh Dobbs cannot play. I cannot say this enough. He cannot play. He is on his maybe 6th or 7th team in the NFL, and you guys actually thought that he was going to be the savior for our fucking season. Think about that for a minute. He's been on multiple teams. They're not stupid. They know that Josh Dobbs was limited. They knew that Josh Dobbs is a backup at best. But you want to blame, it's the play. Oh, Kevin O'Connell, you got to call the runs. You got to call the bootlegs. He can't do the shit. He can't do it. Because if he was a quarterback that could run out the pocket and make plays and do the bootlegs and the play actions, there were so many catastrophes that could have happened in this game that didn't happen. Because the defense probably dropped the interception, or he's trying to do a play action pass and, he holds the ball too long and the running back has to rip it out of his hands and he almost drops it. Like, there are multiple plays this game where that happened multiple times. He cannot play. So miss me with that Dobbs-tranaut or Dobbs gang and all that shit. He cannot play. Okay? He is not going to be the savior for our team. He's not. The experiment is over. The honeymoon is over. It's time for us to officially move on from Josh Dobbs. At this point, I don't want to see Josh Dobbs suit up. He needs to be sitting next to Lewis Cine the rest of the season. Sorry, Cine. Let me take a shot at you, but I'm just saying. He doesn't need to be dressed. He needs to be the third string quarterback, emergency quarterback at best. Because this is another reason why I'm so pissed about the Josh Dobbs situation. Justin Jefferson hurt again, right? Justin Jefferson is one of those players that I will call it, he's an eraser. And what I mean by an eraser is like you can take bad quarterback play with Justin Jefferson, he can erase that shit and make it look good because he's all world as a wide receiver. You can throw a bad ball and he's going to go get it because he's that much of a competitor. And that's what the fuck happened today. Josh Dobbs threw the ball up too high. Justin Jefferson, because he's a competitor, went to go get it because he wants to make the plays to keep the chains moving so we can win this game. And look what happens. He gets hurt. Back of the helmet, hits the field. He has a chest injury, goes out. Then he gets rushed to the hospital. I just got word, my notification that he's at the hospital and he's going to travel with the team. But Josh Dobbs was throwing the ball high to the receivers all fucking day. And like receivers don't want the ball to be thrown high. Throw it low so they won't get taken out. But you deliberately went out there trying to make plays, threw the ball too high, and got the best I'm not going to say the best because Tyreek Hill is making his case right now. One of the best wide receivers in football hurt on some bullshit. I blame Kevin O'Connell for that because if you felt Nick Mullins was the safest option, then you shouldn't have just went with Mullins. But your ego allowed you to say, maybe we can still do this with Hall. He can't play. And look what happened. First game back, JJ's already hurt. I don't know if he's going to play next week. We don't know if he's going to be done for the season. All on some unnecessary plays. Let's move on. Kevin O'Connell. You shouldn't have took Josh Dobbs off the field at halftime. The offense was not moving at all. There was no excuse to keep Josh Dobbs out there. The offense was not moving. You had your defense out there majority of the game. Time of possession was bad. But I do, you know, you know, keep my hat off to you, commend you for saying enough was enough. And you saw what happened when you put a capable backup in the game to finish this game and get the win and go back to Minnesota. Now we're 7-6. It should have never took you that long. But it is what it is moving forward. We had a lot of injuries, this game. We got to wait and see what's going on with O'Neal. Alexander Madison got hurt today. Reisner got hurt. I think he went back in. But Kevin O'Connell, you basically was about to steamroll this whole team, because if the Vikings lose this game, they're basically out the playoffs. And the way with the quarterback was playing, they're not doing anything after that. They're not winning any games. So thank you for making the right decision and putting Mullins in for this game. But this comes to the question that everyone's going to be asking this week. Now that Josh Dobbs has been officially benched, he shouldn't come back and play, and he shouldn't be in consideration to play again. Third string quarterback, emergency quarterback at best going forward, in my opinion. All right. Who should the Minnesota Vikings start next week against the Bengals? Mullins or Hall? At this point, I'm going back to what I've said in multiple videos. Jaren Hall is the only quarterback that you have under contract after this season. It makes more sense to see what you have in Jaren Hall in the next 4 games, so you won't reach for a quarterback. And what I mean by reaching for a quarterback, you don't reach for a quarterback within the draft, and you don't reach for a quarterback within free agency. Jaren Hall can be that quarterback, so you can kind of know what direction you want to go in. And obviously, he can't be much worse than what we saw in Josh Dobbs. It can't get that bad. It can't. So I really feel like there's no reason for you not to start Jaren Hall the rest of these games right now. I mean, we see Nick Mullins could come in there and make some plays and get us down the field. He won this game for us. He did. But he's a backup, and he's not under contract next year. So let's see what we have in Hall. Kevin O'Connell, do the right thing, man. My vote is for Jaren Hall going forward next 4 games. Whatever happens, happens. That's how I feel about it. Looking forward. Now, the Minnesota Vikings had a lot of injuries this game against the Raiders. We're waiting to see the severity of JJ's injury, Alexander Madison's injury, O'Neal's injury. I mean, it was just players, going out left and right. So that's the first thing, I want to see how healthy everyone's going to be, for the Cincinnati game, which is, you call it a short week. It's on Saturday. It's only one day, but that's going forward. I know a lot of talk is going to be about, Mullins versus Hall, but I just say, I think about it like this, the Minnesota Vikings still control their own destiny if they want to get to the playoffs and actually make some noise. And what I mean by that is that you can't look at the score of these other teams around the league and be like, okay, we won, they lost, or whatever. You can't be scoreboard watching right now. You have to go into Cincinnati and take care of business so you can get ready for your last 3 opponents, which is division opponents and conference opponents. So the Vikings have to take care of business. I think Kevin O'Connell, starting tonight on that plane ride back to Minnesota, he should be getting Jaren Hall ready to start the next 4 games and getting the team ready, because I just feel like the Josh Dobbs experiment has just been a disaster. I feel like everything has gotten worse since he's been our quarterback for the past, 4 weeks. I really feel like the offensive line, was playing, really, high grade football, and now they're, not, even though injuries is hitting them right now, they just don't look good. I feel like the receivers are getting open down the field, and they're running good routes. Josh Dobbs can't find them. And with the turnovers and stuff like that, it just wasn't a good fit. So I feel like the Minnesota Vikings got to go in another direction, and they still control their own destiny. But this is just my reaction video, how I feel about the situation, and, how I ended, Vikings, over everything. Skol Vikings, and let's get to the outro, baby.
Thanks for tuning into the Skol State of Mind podcast. Take a beat to give us a 5-star rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. Join us next time, and don't forget to follow Skol State of Mind on all social media platforms to keep up with all the news and updates. Thanks again for listening, and as always, Skol Vikings!